Life experience is a treasure chest of insights, connections, and hard-earned wisdom. That's why some of the best breakthroughs happen later in life. Today's episode is for anyone who's ever wondered if they've missed their moment. Maybe you're older and feeling like the world passed you by. Maybe you're younger and already feeling behind. Either way, I've got great news. You're not too old and you're right on time. Today we're celebrating the slow burners, the patient cultivators, the late bloomers, and I'm going to tell you why time can be a powerful ingredient in your success story and why your so-called late start might actually be an advantage, because sometimes later really is greater. Hello, my friend, and welcome. This is episode number 19, You're Not Too Old, Why Your Best Chapter Might Be the One You're Just Starting. My birthday is coming up next month, so I've been thinking about age and how we so often use it as a reason to hold back, to play small, to think, I should have done that by now, or that ship has sailed. And by the way, if you're one of my 30-something-year-old listeners, please stay with me. I think you'll love this episode too. And when you're done listening, you can share the episode with your mom or your dad or your great Aunt Sally, maybe even grandma. So, what if age isn't a countdown, but a collection of experiences, of wisdom, of perspectives that only time can provide? Your journey isn't determined by a calendar. Your possibilities, your growth, your impact, they don't have an age limit. They don't have an expiration date. And what if, just what if our best work, our best contributions, our best experiences are still ahead? You know, maybe it's just my birthday excitement talking, but I want to offer you a different perspective today. One where time becomes your ally instead of your enemy. Where your dream, your growth, your purpose remain possible, not just despite your age, but because of it. So let's suspend the thought, I'm too old to do it now, I missed my chance, I've aged out, should have done it sooner. Let's just set all of that aside, just for a bit, and see where we can go with this. Okay, are you with me? And if you happen to listen to episode number 14 a few weeks back, you might remember that was about letting go of unfinished dreams. In that one, I talked about how sometimes it's okay to release or reframe a dream if it no longer fits your life or your values or your current reality. But today's a bit different because some dreams still matter, and it's not always about letting go. It's about picking them back up sometimes, even if it's later than you thought it would be. So if you haven't heard episode 14 yet, you might want to go back and check it out after this one. It pairs really well with today's message. I'll give you a little overview. Here's what we'll cover. We'll look at some famous people who didn't find their stride until later in life. I'll share a few psychological and practical advantages to age. Yes, there actually are some. And I want to throw in a little science for my fellow data lovers. And I'll wrap it all up with a personal story about my grandmama who lived that never too late message courageously. So to kick things off, here are some names you'll know and maybe a few you might not know. Real life examples that offer a little proof that later doesn't mean lesser. So Grandma Moses. She was a woman who started painting at age 78 and became a beloved American folk artist. Her paintings got really popular in the 1950s when she was pictured on a Time magazine cover. And get this, by that time she was 93. And she didn't die until she was 101, so she had a lot of life left at that age. Laura Ingalls Wilder. She is the woman who wrote the Little House on the Prairie series. And I didn't know this, but she did not publish her first Little House book until age 65. I love Little House on the Prairie. I grew up watching that. All right, this next guy, Peter Roche, you might not know that name. Maybe you do. He published the first Thesaurus, and he was 73 years old. And then there's some of these others. These are stories, common stories you've probably heard. Susan Boyle auditioned for Britain's Got Talent, became a global sensation at age 47, which is a lot older than most of the contestants on that show. Julia Child, her first cookbook, Mastering the Art of French Cooking, came out when she was 49. I love that her advice to people was, learn how to cook, try new recipes, learn from your mistakes, be fearless, and above all, have fun. Too bad I can't say it in her iconic voice, but I think that's great advice for life. Try new recipes, learn from your mistakes, be fearless, and above all, have fun. Yeah. And then there's Samuel Jackson. He landed his first breakout movie role at age 46. Martha Stewart published her first book at 41, started her empire after that. Ray Kroc joined McDonald's and turned it into a franchise giant at age 52. And Colonel Sanders, he didn't start Kentucky Fried Chicken until he was 62, which honestly was the perfect age, I think, to pull off that white suit, the snowy white hair, that little skinny goatee, which, a little bit of trivia here, technically that type of goatee isn't called a goatee, it's called a Van Dyke. And let's be honest, most 30-year-olds could not have pulled that off. Age gave him branding, swagger, and a secret recipe. And there are a lot of older influencers I follow on social media. I don't know if any of you know Joan McDonald, better known as Train with Joan. A few years ago, she was overweight, out of shape, and she started her fitness journey at 70 years old. Now, 5 years later, she's an Instagram star with 2 million followers. And of her health journey, she said, "I had no idea it would work, but I was desperate to try anyway. I didn't believe in myself, but I kept showing up. Little by little, the doubt got quieter and the strength got louder." She's very inspiring. Okay, one more. Harry Bernstein. He published his first successful memoir, The Invisible Wall, at age 93. This is such a sweet story. Ruby, his wife, died when she was 91 and he was 92. And they were very much in love. He said, "I thought I had died too." And then he said, "And thus began that period of life when it seemed that nothing more of significance could happen to me other than my death." That's so sad. But then, listen to this. This is what he wrote about these years in his 90s. He lived till he was 101. So what did he do during that time when a lot of people would be in a lazy boy watching TV and eating canned peaches? No offense if you like canned peaches. I love them too. But he said, "Little did I know that it would prove to be the most exciting and productive part of my life. In order to forget the terrible loss I had suffered," he's talking about when Ruby died, "I turned back to my writing and began my memoir, The Invisible Wall." So he wrote that book and it became a huge success. And he said, "I hope to be able to reach 100 years old. I hope to be able to write more books." And he did. He wrote 2 more very well-received books after that. So he was really busy, not only with writing, but with interviews, book signings, talks. And he was quoted as saying, "I have proven with all this that age need not be a barrier to a useful and creative life." Don't you love it? All right, psychological advantages of late success. So there's the important one of accumulated wisdom. Later life achievers bring decades of experience to ventures, and that allows them to avoid common pitfalls and to make better strategic decisions because they've got so much more life experience. That means you're making decisions with more insight and less impulse. And then there's emotional resilience. Older innovators have typically weathered numerous life challenges. We've survived hard things and developed grit, and that helps them persist through setbacks and stay the course when things get tough. And then there's a reduced fear of failure. You've learned to trust your gut a little more, and you're less worried about what other people think. Many late bloomers describe caring less about the opinions of others or social rejection, and that really frees them up to take bigger risks. And clarity of purpose. Older people have a clearer sense of what really matters to them. So that creates strong motivation and commitment. It's easier to stop chasing things that just aren't that important. And then there's perspective and patience. Life experience teaches that meaningful achievements take time. And that helps late bloomers stick with long-term projects because you have more patience with yourself and with projects. And then there's the practical advantages. There's established networks of people. When you're older, you have decades of personal relationships and professional relationships, and they provide valuable connections and potential supporters. That's gold. And then financial stability. Many older entrepreneurs have savings or established income streams that allow them to take calculated risks. Maybe not millionaire level, but maybe you've got a little cushion and you don't have a house full of kids and a lot of stress going on, and that can really help. And time availability. Empty nesters or semi-retired people often have more hours to dedicate to new passions. And what about, I would call this cross-disciplinary insights. So like if you've had different jobs in your life, you've got a lot of experience and you bring different perspectives from previous fields that you've worked in. And so that can lead to really having new approaches. Your past work brings that fresh thinking. And if you're the kind of person who likes a little proof to go with your pep talk, there's actually science behind this whole "you're not too old" idea. Thanks to something called neuroplasticity, your brain is still growing. Yes, it is, and it's wired to keep learning, adapting, and making new connections, no matter your age. Studies even show that creativity doesn't magically peak at 25 and disappear. In fact, depending on the field, midlife and beyond can be prime time for innovation, especially in areas like insight, storytelling, and emotional intelligence. And speaking of that, emotional intelligence tends to increase as we age. So you're actually better equipped to deal with challenges and make wise decisions and navigate people stuff than you were back in your figure-it-out years. And get this, entrepreneurs over 50 are more likely to succeed than those in their 20s and their 30s. Did you know that? And why? Well, all the things we talked about: experience, networks, better decisions, maybe a little cushion of money, a little more time. That counts for a lot. While physical energy may change, passion for meaningful work often creates sustainable motivation. So if anyone tells you it's too late, you can just smile and say, actually, I've got data on my side. I want to tell you about my maternal grandma. She lived her life in a way that proves you're never too old to start something new. She was born in 1907 and grew up in a small rural town. The highest schooling available where she lived was 8th grade, and she loved school so much that she actually went through the 8th grade twice, 2 years in a row, just to get some more school in. But that was it. That was all the education her little town offered. And the nearest high school was in the next town over, and getting there meant riding a horse quite a ways. And she did it. She made the effort and attended for about a month. But then both of her parents became seriously ill, and she had to return home and take care of them. She never got the chance to go back to school. Also, my grandma had a lot of grief in her life. She had to be a tough cookie. While she was a young adult, both of her parents passed away. And through the years, each of her 5 siblings died. And she also lost 2 husbands to death and 3 of her children, 3 little girls, over different years. I'm actually named after my Aunt Carol, who died when she was 9 years old. And yet, with all that, Grandma stayed open to life and open to possibilities. She worked for many years at a veterans hospital in California, and she'd been a widow for years by this time. When she was 61, which I know, that's not old, but her niece introduced her through letters to a man that the niece knew named Bill from a small town in Utah. He was a widower too, and they became pen pals. They wrote to each other for about a year, the old-fashioned way, real handwritten letters sent through snail mail. And somewhere in those handwritten letters, they fell in love. Dreamy, right? So they got married, and she gave up her life in California and moved to Utah. By this time, she was 62, he was 65, and in her journal, she wrote that she told her co-workers at the VA hospital, "I'm gonna go marry a cowboy." And Bill was also open to starting a new chapter of his life, a new romance. His wife of many years had died about 4 years prior, and they had never had any children. So when he married my grandma, he instantly became Grandpa for the first time, and we called him Grandpa Bill. He was a tall, very sweet old cowboy who made delicious divinity candy, by the way. But I digress. Bill and Grandma had so much in common, and they both loved fishing. Now, while she was back in California, she would always take classes when she could, because remember, she liked school, she liked learning. I think I inherited that from her. But she was also working full-time during those years. And then after she got married to Bill, and the year she turned 70, she had a chance to go back to high school as a high school senior and as an adult senior. Oh, small fact check on myself. Back in episode 14 about the unfinished dreams, I mentioned this briefly, and I said she graduated high school at age 72. She was actually 70. Still amazing, still inspiring. Okay, back to my story. So Grandma, along with 2 other older women in the little town, enrolled as seniors at the local high school. I'm sure they had to take some tests going from 8th grade and then 50 years later being in high school. And she's not here, so I can't ask her the details. But in May of that year, when she graduated, my family drove to that small town and watched my cute grandma walk across the stage and get her high school diploma. Look at me, I still get teared up. It was so many years ago, and it still just makes me so happy. It makes my heart smile. So she wore the blue gown, the cap, the tassel, the whole shebang. And when she walked across that stage to finally get her high school diploma, it was such a moment. She had wanted that since she was a teenager on horseback, attending school for just that 1 month before she had to quit. It was a huge deal to her. And it was a big deal to us. I remember clearly, I was just finishing my junior year of high school. And my sister, who was a grade ahead of me, graduated the same year as our grandma. So that's pretty cool. What I remember most, besides the big smile on her face, was the cute high school boys. They stood up and hooted and hollered when my grandma walked across the stage. They loved her. They were so genuinely happy and excited that she was getting her diploma. It was adorable, and it meant so much to her. She also took up painting in her later years, published a book of poetry, all of those things, falling in love again, moving across the country, going back to school, painting, writing, publishing her poems, even documenting her life story. She did it all in the last 12 years of her life. Because in a heartbreaking twist, she passed away only 4 years after her graduation from injuries in a car accident. But wow, what she packed into those final years, so age 62 to 74, was courageous and creative. It's April when I'm recording this, and since April is Poetry Month, I want to honor her by closing this episode with one of her poems. And I should tell you, she wrote poems about everyday life. In my episode 9, The Art of Everyday Living, which, by the way, is one of my very favorite episodes. Anyway, I talk about how often artists' greatest works are paintings just of simple, everyday things that we do in life. And that's how she wrote her poems also. She just wrote poems about every little thing in life. So here's what she wrote to her friends at the VA hospital about leaving California to start a new chapter with that cowboy. She titled it Down California Way. When I leave this large state and go back home to stay, I'm weeding out all unkind thoughts and remembering good each day. I'll think of all the lovely flowers that blossomed round the bay, the good times I've spent with you down California way. The patients I will not forget, though sometimes I must say, their jokes and interruptions fill my life with sheer dismay. I say it takes some humor, love, and patience every day to listen to their far-out takes down California way. I'll think of all the pleasant working days of the lively games we'd play when conversations brought us smiles, togetherness on display. My thoughts will have no room for hate. To my friends back home I'll say, there are lots and lots of special folks down California way. So I hope this inspired you to know you're not too old to try a new hobby, take a class, learn a language, travel to that place you've always wanted to go, start a business, or maybe just a side hustle, fall in love again, make new friends, write your story, your memoir, get healthy, start lifting weights, change careers, bless someone's life by being a mentor. Surprise yourself with what you can accomplish. Don't let age be your obstacle. Let it be your secret weapon. Please share this episode with a friend. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I'll catch you next time. Keep shining.